Hey guys, it's Karan.
And Sophie.
Thank you for joining us today as we talk about voting and why it's important with a.
Very special guest, Finnegan Biden.
Hi, not so special, but thank you guys so much for joining me.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
How are you doing? How's it been on the road? I know it gets really crazy as it gets down to the final days.
Yeah, so it's been pretty crazy. I've been living with my grandparents. I had to quarantine and then move in here with them. And it's been pretty hectic, I would say. I've been kind of switching off between traveling with my Nana or my pop. And so, yeah, I've been kind of all over the place.
Also, it's so funny to hear you reference like Joe Biden and Mrs. Biden as
I know. As
Mom.
Nan and Pop. Yeah, which is also, people give me a lot of pushback for that. My friends do. They're like, that's so weird that you call your grandparents Nana and Pop. So it's kind of confusing for people, but yeah.
I love it. I think it's special to have like a little pet name for your like grandparents as opposed to just like grandma. I get it.
Yeah, I guess. I call my other grandparents grandma and grandpa. So I think it's easier for me to like be able to tell the difference, but for other people, they're like, who is Nana and Pop?
Exactly. So if you don't mind me asking, can you tell us a little bit about your grandparents and what they're up to for those of for like those viewers who don't know who Ma and Pop are?
Yeah. So my grandmother, Jill Biden, who I call Nana, in her spare time, she campaigns and works with my grandfather, Joe Biden, or who I call Pop. But she's actually an English teacher. She took this semester off to campaign, but she's been an English teacher her whole life at community colleges. So she's extremely passionate about that. And so I'm regularly being corrected on my grammar. I apologize to anyone who doesn't think I have good grammar. My Nana regularly tells me I don't. So, and then my Pop, Joe Biden, is running for president of the United States, if you don't know that already. And yeah, so we're just here talking about, the campaign and what's been going on with them.
Nice. That's awesome. And now to like kind of gear things more towards voting. Is this anyone's like first time voting? Because I voted during the midterms, which was like my first official time voting. But what about you guys?
I also voted during midterms.
Yeah.
This is my first, it's my first like presidential election.
Yeah, my first presidential election was the last one. So I'm really hoping this one goes better.
Nice. Hoping so.
Yeah.
What's interesting is like, I was very like, okay, like it's when the midterms came around, I was like, okay, it's easy. You're just filling out a piece of paper. But I don't know if you guys feel this. I feel an like incredible amount of anxiety when I'm filling out a ballot. I'm like, it feels like, this is dramatic to say, but it feels like democracy on paper. And that's like just very overwhelming for me.
I mean, I don't even know if that's dramatic. I would say it's like the life or death of democracy on paper. And so I just filled out my ballot. I early voted in Philadelphia, and I agree with you. I was very anxious. I was like, I quadruple checked it to make sure that I did not accidentally fill anything out. I was waiting in line for 4.5 hours. So I was making sure I researched exactly what would be on the ballot. So I wasn't, surprised by anything. But it is definitely scary, I think, because there is so much pressure on us in this election. But yeah, have you guys voted yet, or what are your plans?
Yes, we both early voted. So we both did the whole thing. And I think for me too, it is like there is a lot of anxiety and it is a huge thing, but I think that like you said, researching is a way to sort of make it more digestible and exciting. And do you have any tips on like for first time voters, what you would recommend to sort of help them prepare for like the actual process of having to do it, as it is overwhelming, as we've said?
Yeah. So, I would definitely start with making a plan, going to iwillvote.com and deciding whether or not, it's getting really down to the wire. So from this point on, you should be going in person on election day don't request a ballot and don't put anything into the mail. Go to a drop box, or if you don't have a ballot yet, wait in line on election day. And from there, I would say look up what the ballot is going to look like. Because I think when you see it for the first time, you're kind of like, wait a second, I didn't know that there were, things being added to our state constitution, or, I didn't know that there were laws on my ballot. So look up what's going to be on the ballot and do some research. Because it also isn't just your president. It's, in some cases, local state legislature, or your congressman, or Senate. So those are also really important. So making sure you're researching before you go in.
Yeah, and why do you think voting is important? Because I know for me, like, I view it as, I think it's overwhelming when you think about the population of the U.S. and you're just like, oh, my vote gets lost. But I think how I view it is that it's a privilege to vote. And, my parents are immigrants, and, they've endured so much for me to be here today. And if I can make a positive impact on their lives or other people's lives with my vote, I'm going to try to do that. But what about for you guys?
Well, for me, I think as a woman, I feel like my rights are on the ballot. But as a friend of the LGBT community, of the Black community, of the immigrant community, or an ally to them, their rights are also on the ballot. So like you were saying, not only did my grandmothers fight for and their grandmothers fight for our right to vote, my friends' grandparents, like what you were just saying. So it's important that we keep in mind, our friends' rights and what means something to them. Are their rights on the ballot? So for me, that's what I was thinking about when I was voting. Definitely. What about you?
Yeah, I think same for me. It's about knowing that we have any power in our own rights and control over how our future is, like, as daunting as that can be, and also as insignificant as you can feel. Like, really, that is your voice is on that ballot, and it does count and it does matter. And I think it's important to remember that. And that's every time, you go to, I feel like someone complains about the process of voting, or like, oh, I don't know, it doesn't count. Like, I always remember, like you said, the people who fought for our right to vote, and just that, like, the little things like state legislature, all of that adds up, all of that matters towards our bigger future.
Yeah, and I think it's so easy nowadays on social media to post about something you care about, having to do with civil rights or environmental justice, climate change. But then I'm kind of like, did you vote? Because if you didn't, none of the things that you're posting about are going to happen. So
yeah.
Kind of am like, I think President Obama said, don't tweet, vote. And I think that is the best line in our generation and for our generation to listen to. It's like, don't post something on your story if you're not going to get out there and do the work.
And I think it's so important to, like, hold our neighbors accountable in this process, because it can feel like when it's coming up to it, you're like, do I really want to check my registration to vote? Like, do I want to go through this, like, process? But it's important that we, look to each other and go that it's more than just, circling in a few bubbles and just, assuming that everything's going to be fine. It's, these votes actually push the needle in one direction or the other. And where those can be, frankly, life or death for some people, but also it can be their access to healthcare. It can be, what their school funding looks like for that year. It can really make a big difference, even if we feel like it might not affect our day-to-day lives.
Yeah.
And what are some issues that you guys are really passionate about in this election season?
I feel like every day something new.
Yeah. It's very overwhelming.
But I really want police reform and criminal justice reform. But I also really want climate change. I don't want any climate change deniers in the White House or in our government, because at this point I'm like, did you go to school or do you even read the news? So, I mean, I get so angry talking about it. But then, I mean, the 525 kids that don't have parents on the border right now, I mean, that's also on the ballot. So there are a lot of issues that we need to take seriously when we go to the polls on November 3rd, if you haven't already voted.
Yeah, I'm literally ditto to all of those.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of listed them perfectly and really eloquently. But yeah, I agree. We have so much happening on the micro and the macro.
Yeah.
People's lives are being changed constantly, but also we have to, the countdown is really on with climate change.
Yeah.
And we have to make sure that we really hunker down and we elect officials that are taking it just as seriously as we are and are making the change in the macro as we are trying to do in the micro.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great question to ask as far as for everybody checking with themselves when they go to vote. Okay, there are so many issues that I care about. What are my priorities and how do I vote towards my the things I care about most? And it's a good thing to check in with yourself and remember when you're going to vote, for sure. Yeah.
And I think you said it best about moving the needle in the right direction. I think we all, being in our generation, know so many kids that are I'm not going to vote. Either my vote doesn't count or this candidate doesn't believe in everything that I believe in. We are never going to find a perfect candidate, but we know that there are candidates who push the needle in the right direction, like you were saying. So are we just going to sit out an election and move backwards 10 years and complain that that candidate wasn't perfect and have a repeat of 2016? Or are we going to take a step in the right direction, even if it's not necessarily the right shoes? If you're thinking about oh, they're not wearing the right shoes, but they're going in the right direction. So I don't really have any patience for people that aren't taking this election seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we have to really think about our future and our kids' futures, because for Gen Z especially, there's a lot riding on us and our vote, because our future, there's a lot of uncertainty associated with it. It's important we take control of that future and we try to guide it in the direction that we want it to go.
Yeah.
And hopefully in a positive direction.
Yeah.
And my last question for you guys is, after this election, what do you hope America will look like?
Do you want me to go first?
Go for it.
I know that's a very daunting question.
I think more loving.
Yeah.
And acceptance. For me, that we're so divided. I don't want any more identity politics. I want to be moving in a direction where we're talking to one another. And I don't think politicians now think that our generation wants that, because we are so loud and we are so opinionated. But I know that our generation has a lot of different viewpoints, and we have discussions among ourselves about how we want to make that change. So I know that we're ready to be united and have the conversations that are hard, even if we disagree with each other. And so that's what I want. I don't want this division and hatred, which over the past 4 years, I think has been really exhausting and disheartening.
That was the first thing that came to my head, is just unity.
Yeah.
I think we're never going to all agree, but I think that there is a really extreme amount of division right now that is frankly kind of scary at times, and that's what I hope as well.
Finnegan, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you guys for tuning in and checking out this video. We really appreciate it.
And everybody go vote.
Yes, go vote. Thank you for watching.